The night was cold and quiet on the abandoned spaceport. Broken ships leaned against rusted metal walls, and the stars above shone like tiny fires in the darkness. No one came here anymore, not since the colony had collapsed years ago. Only the wind moved freely, carrying the faint smell of burnt metal and dust. Valerian Ashscale, the old dragon warrior, sat near a small fire. His scales, once bright and golden, were now dulled by age and battle scars. His wings rested against his back, folded like tired sails, and his long tail curled around the stones. He was a giant among the ruins, and everyone who knew him whispered stories of his past. He had been a soldier, feared across galaxies, but now he was alone. He looked down at the fire, poking at it with a claw, wondering why he even stayed here. The crackle of the fire was broken by soft footsteps. Valerian's sharp eyes lifted, scanning the dark. He saw a small figure, hunched and thin, moving carefully toward him. The boy's clothes were torn, and his face was pale from hunger and cold. Valerian's instincts told him to growl, to warn the intruder to stay away, but the boy did not run. He walked straight to the dragon and stopped a few feet away. The boy's eyes were wide, not with fear, but with hope. His lips moved slowly, forming words that were almost swallowed by the wind. "Can I have the leftovers?" he asked, his voice trembling. Valerian blinked. He had expected fear, greed, or even a challenge. Not a question like this. The words hung in the air, small and humble, yet filled with honesty. The dragon studied the boy, his mind racing. Why had this human come to him? Why ask for leftovers instead of stealing, begging, or running away? Something in the boy's simple request made Valerian pause. The firelight danced across the dragon's scales, highlighting each scar and mark of past wars. He remembered battles that had destroyed entire worlds, enemies that had fallen under his claws, and cities that had burned by his command. He had been a weapon, a living storm. And yet, here was a child who asked for nothing more than a small piece of food. Valerian's voice was low and rough as he spoke. "You want my leftovers?" The boy nodded quickly. I haven't eaten in 2 days," he said. "Please." His hands were small and shaking. His eyes held no trick, no lie. Just hunger and honesty. The dragon looked at the remains of his meal. It was not much. Some cooked meat and vegetables, barely enough for himself. He had eaten sparingly, not because he wanted to, but because he had grown tired of everything. No one asked him for anything anymore. No one cared to see him, to speak to him. And now this boy stood before him, expecting only kindness. Valerian let out a slow breath that smelled of smoke and metal. Then, with a motion that surprised even himself, he pushed the plate closer to the boy. "Take it," he said simply. The boy's eyes lit up. He crouched down and began eating carefully, as if the food were a treasure. Valerian watched, curious, as the boy's small hands moved with care, taking small bites, savoring each piece. The dragon had expected greed or chaos, but he saw none of that. The boy was respectful. He did not grab, he did not complain, he simply ate what was given. For the first time in years, Valerian felt something stir inside him. It was not pride, nor power, nor victory. It was warmth. A small, strange warmth that he had not felt since before the wars began. He had fought countless battles, faced countless enemies, and yet no one had ever looked at him like this boy did. No one had asked for a small kindness instead of fearing his strength. The boy paused and looked up at Valerian, his mouth still half full. "Thank you," he whispered. The words were soft, but they echoed in the dragon's mind louder than any roar he had ever heard in battle. Valerian did not answer immediately. He watched the boy, noting the thin arms, the dirt on his face, the small, careful movements. There was something brave in this human child. Not the kind of bravery that charged into battle, but the quiet, steady courage of someone who faced hunger, fear, and the cold alone. The wind shifted, carrying the faint sounds of the empty port. A distant alarm bell rang somewhere, but neither the boy nor the dragon moved. They were still, connected in the silence. Valerian realized something that he had long forgotten, that even a small act, a simple question, could change everything. The boy finished the last of the food and sat back, leaning against the cool metal of a broken wall. He looked up at Valerian and smiled shyly. You didn't have to give it to me," he said. "I just asked." Valerian's clawed hand rested on the ground. "No one has asked me for anything, for a long time," he admitted. "And I forgot how it feels." The boy tilted his head. "Feels good." Valerian allowed himself a small rumble, not quite a laugh, but close enough. "Yes, it feels good." For the first time in years, the old dragon warrior felt seen, not as a weapon, not as a monster, but as someone who could still make a choice. And for the first time in years the boy felt safe, not because the dragon would protect him by force, but because he had shown mercy and kindness without hesitation. The stars above seemed brighter, the night less empty. A small fire crackled between them, casting shadows that danced across broken metal and worn stone. The boy leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, finally free of hunger. Valerian looked at him and wondered quietly, for the first time in a long while, if maybe his path had changed. And in that simple question, can I have the leftovers? The first thread of something new, something unspoken and powerful, began to grow between the dragon and the boy. A bond that would not be broken easily, no matter what the galaxy might throw at them next. The night continued, quiet but alive, as firelight and silence held them together. And neither of them moved, knowing that everything somehow had already begun to change. The fire crackled softly as the boy, Aaron Holt, finished the last bite of food. Valerian Ashscale watched him carefully, still amazed at the quiet courage in the child. No one had ever dared to sit with him, let alone eat with him. The spaceport was empty and cold, but somehow with the boy beside him, it felt warmer. Aaron looked up at the dragon and smiled shyly. It was really good, he said. Thank you, for letting me have it. Valerian rumbled softly, the sound low and thoughtful. You could have stolen it, he said, but you did not. The boy shrugged. I didn't want trouble. Just food. Valerian studied him. The thin arms, the dirt-stained clothes, the tired eyes, they told a story of struggle, not of mischief. The dragon had seen hundreds of humans in his lifetime, but none like this. None so small, so fragile, and yet, so honest. You live here alone? Valerian asked. Aaron nodded. The colony broke apart. Most people left. I stay here. His voice trembled slightly, but there was no fear. I find food where I can. Sleep where it's safe. Valerian felt a pang he had not expected. He had lived centuries, fought countless battles, destroyed countless enemies, and yet this boy, weaker than a leaf, survived in a world that had forgotten him. The dragon had power, weapons, fire, and strength beyond imagination. And still he realized this child had more courage than many soldiers he had known. You are brave, Valerian said finally. Braver than you know. Aaron blinked, not used to hearing praise. I just try to survive, he said quietly. Valerian's eyes softened. He poked the fire with a claw and watched the sparks rise into the dark sky. Survival can be brave, he said. Sometimes more than fighting. The boy leaned back against a broken wall, looking at the stars above. Do you fight a lot? He asked, curious. Valerian hesitated, memories of past wars flashing through his mind, planets he had scorched, cities he had leveled, lives he had ended. I fought a lot, he said slowly. Once I was feared across the galaxy. People called me a warrior of storms. But now, I do not fight. Not anymore. Aaron's eyes widened. Really? You don't fight? Valerian shook his head. I have grown tired. Tired of destruction. Tired of death. Tired of being alone. The boy considered this, then nodded. Sometimes, people leave you because you are too strong. Or too scary. The dragon's tail twitched slightly. No human had ever understood him so simply, so clearly. Yes, he admitted. Many feared me. Many avoided me. Most would not speak to me. Aaron's small hand rested on the edge of the plate, tracing the burnt edges. I'm not most, he said softly. Valerian looked at him, startled by the simple honesty. You are not, he asked. No, said the boy. I don't care about that stuff. I care about, right now. I care about being alive. About having something to eat. About being kind. The dragon leaned back, letting the firelight dance across his scarred scales. He realized the boy had done something remarkable. Not with strength or fire, but with a quiet heart. Aaron had broken a wall around him, a wall he had built over centuries of war, fear, and solitude. You are clever, Valerian said. Not clever like a soldier, but clever in the heart. That is rare. Aaron smiled faintly. I just try to be okay. Valerian rumbled again, almost like a laugh, low and soft. You make it sound simple. The boy shrugged. It can be. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the wind move through the empty port. The fire flickered, sending long shadows across broken metal and shattered walls. The dragon realized that, for the first time in centuries, he did not feel lonely. Not with this small human beside him, not with the trust in the boy's eyes. Aaron finally spoke again. Do you eat alone all the time? Valerian nodded. Always. It is easier. No one disturbs me. No one asks for anything. The boy's eyes softened. I think, eating together is nicer, he said simply. Even if it's just a little. The dragon looked down at the boy, at the earnestness in his gaze. He felt something shift inside, something he had not felt since before the wars. A small hope, a tiny spark. Maybe he did not have to be alone. Maybe he could still do something good, something kind, something that did not leave ruin behind. Valerian extended a claw, not threatening but inviting. Sit closer, he said. There is room. Aaron moved carefully, settling beside the dragon, careful not to touch the scales too roughly. The firelight glinted in his eyes, and Valerian felt the strangest thing, pride. Not in battle, not in victory, but in sharing a quiet moment. You are not afraid of me? The dragon asked. The boy shook his head. No. I think you are just tired. Valerian rumbled in agreement. Yes, tired. They watched the fire together, and the night seemed less empty. The boy's small presence had cracked a wall around the dragon's heart. He realized that strength was not always in power or fire. Sometimes strength was in letting someone in, sharing and trusting. Aaron, for the first time in many nights, felt safe. Not because the dragon could protect him with claws and wings, but because the dragon had chosen kindness. Because the dragon had chosen him. The wind moved through the ruins, carrying sparks of fire high into the sky. And between the boy and the old warrior dragon, a quiet bond was growing. Not with words, not with battles, but with trust, honesty, and a shared meal. For Valerian, the walls of fear and loneliness began to crumble. For Aaron, the night was no longer cold. And for both of them, the galaxy for once seemed a little smaller, a little kinder, and full of possibilities. In that silent, flickering firelight, a small friendship had begun, one that would grow stronger than any war, stronger than any fear. And all it had taken was one small question, and one small act of sharing. The night had grown colder, and the stars above the ruined spaceport twinkled faintly. Valerian Ashscale's fire crackled, sending small sparks into the darkness. Aaron Holt sat beside him, leaning against the broken metal wall, tired but warm for the first time in many days. The dragon watched him eat the last crumbs of the shared meal and felt a strange sense of calm. You are very quiet, the boy said softly, breaking the silence. Do you think a lot? Valerian's deep eyes stared into the fire. I think about many things, he admitted. About what I have done. About what I have seen. About the worlds I have touched and broken. Aaron looked at him carefully, noticing the shadow in the dragon's eyes. Broken. Valerian nodded slowly. Long ago I was a soldier. I fought under orders. I did things, terrible things. Planets burned. Cities fell. People suffered because of me. His voice was low, carrying weight that even the stars seemed to hear. Aaron's small hand rested on the edge of the fire's warmth. That sounds scary. Valerian's lips twitched, almost like a smile, but it was heavy with memory. It was more than scary. It was sorrow. I did not always want to fight, but I obeyed. I had no choice, or so I told myself. The boy looked down at his knees, thinking. So, you have regrets? The dragon rumbled deeply. Many. Regrets that do not fade. I have carried them for centuries. Aaron lifted his eyes to meet Valerian's. Then, why do you stay here? If it hurts so much. Valerian's tail swished slowly. Because this exile, this quiet, it keeps me from hurting others. I thought solitude would erase the pain. But it does not. It only grows louder inside me. The boy was silent for a moment, then said, I think, sometimes hiding makes the pain bigger. Talking helps. Valerian's eyes narrowed slightly. No human had ever spoken to him like this. Not with fear, not with judgment, not even with curiosity. Only Aaron spoke with honesty, small and careful, but full of understanding. Talk about what? Valerian asked, his deep voice cautious. About everything. About the things that scare you. About the things that hurt you. About the things you think you cannot change, Aaron said quietly. Valerian considered this. A small human child, teaching an ancient dragon warrior about speaking his heart. It was impossible, and yet, somehow, it felt right. I killed, he said slowly. I followed orders. I destroyed. I did not think of the lives I ended, only of the mission. I thought that was duty. But now I cannot forgive myself. Aaron reached out and touched the dragon's claw gently. Then maybe, forgiving yourself is not about forgetting. It's about doing something different now. Something good. Valerian looked down at the small hand on his claw. He had expected fear or theft, not wisdom. He had expected hunger and weakness, not courage. The boy had no weapons, no power, and yet he was teaching him a lesson that no army or battle could have ever done. Good, how? Valerian asked, curiosity mingling with uncertainty. Aaron shrugged. Helping. Sharing. Protecting things that cannot protect themselves. Even if it's small. Even if no one notices. Even if it's just one person or one place or one meal. Valerian's mind drifted to the fires he had set, the cities he had watched burn, the cries he had ignored. He had thought strength meant fear. Now he saw that strength could mean kindness. That courage could mean patience, mercy, and care. You understand much for a small human, he said quietly. I understand more than you think, Aaron replied. I have to survive alone. I have to be smart. I have to be brave even if I am scared all the time. Valerian let out a low rumble, a mixture of sorrow and admiration. He had seen warriors braver than kings, humans braver than soldiers, and yet this child carried a strength unlike any he had known, quiet, honest, and fearless in its simplicity. Why, stay here with me? Valerian asked finally. You are small. You could leave. Go anywhere. Aaron shook his head. I like being here. Safe. And you are not like other dragons I have heard of. You do not scare me. You might even help me. Valerian's scales shimmered slightly in the firelight. He realized he had spent so long hiding from himself that he forgot the world could still surprise him. A small boy had arrived, hungry and lost, and had changed him simply by asking for a meal. The world fears me, he said. I have done much that cannot be forgiven. And yet, you sit with me. You trust me. Aaron smiled faintly. I trust people who show they care. You cared. That's enough for me. The dragon rumbled, a sound that shook the small pieces of metal nearby. Care? Has such power even small care? Yes, Aaron said firmly. Even one small act can change a lot. Valerian leaned back on his haunches, staring at the fire. The boy's words echoed in his mind. Change. One small act of kindness could alter a life, or a century of sorrow. One shared meal had already done more than decades of fighting could. The wind whispered through the ruins, carrying ash and dust. The fire danced, and the boy's eyes reflected its light. Valerian realized something remarkable. He could still choose. He could still decide to do good. He could still face the past and make something better. Aaron yawned, tired from the long day. I should sleep soon, he said softly. Valerian looked down at him. Sleep. Here. I will watch. The boy nodded, settling against the warm metal wall and the dragon's shadow. Valerian felt a strange peace, something he had not felt in centuries. Not because the past was gone, but because he had someone beside him who reminded him the future could be different. And in that quiet night, with firelight and stars around them, Valerian Ashscale realized the weight of his past was heavy, but it could be carried differently now. With care. With trust. With a small human beside him, showing him the way. The ruins were still, the wind calm, and the galaxy felt slightly less harsh. And for the first time in a long time, the old dragon warrior thought, maybe, just maybe, he could forgive himself. The next morning, the wind blew cold across the empty spaceport. Broken ships creaked, and small pieces of metal rattled on the ground. Aaron Holt awoke slowly, rubbing his eyes, and found Valerian Ashscale already awake, sitting by the fire. The old dragon warrior's eyes scanned the horizon, alert even in peace. Good morning, Aaron said quietly. Did you sleep? Valerian rumbled softly. A little. Not much. Old bones do not rest easily. Aaron yawned and stretched. I wish I could sleep like that. Valerian tilted his head, watching the boy carefully. You survived alone, he said. You sleep when you can. That is bravery too. The spaceport was still empty, but the quiet was broken by distant shouts. Aaron stiffened, ears catching the sound of footsteps, clanging metal, and voices raised in fear. From the horizon came a small group of alien scavengers, their strange shapes moving between the wrecks. They had weapons, crude but dangerous, and they were looking for trouble. Valerian rose, his massive form towering over the boy. Stay close, he said. Aaron nodded, not scared. Somehow, being with the dragon made him feel safer than he had in months. The scavengers approached quickly, shouting in a language Aaron did not understand. They were armed with metal rods and tools, not deadly but enough to harm someone small. They spotted Valerian and froze for a moment, their eyes widening. They had heard the stories of the old dragon warrior, the one who had destroyed entire colonies in past wars. Valerian stepped forward. His claws dug into the ground, his wings slightly spread. The scavengers stopped, unsure what to do. They expected fire, claws, and destruction. But Valerian did not move to strike. He did not roar. He only looked at them, tall and imposing yet calm. Aaron whispered, "He's not going to fight?" Valerian's eyes met his. "Not today. Sometimes strength is in stopping, not striking." The leader of the scavengers stepped forward, waving a metal rod. "Step aside, dragon. This place belongs to us now," he shouted. Valerian did not move. His deep voice rumbled across the empty spaceport. "This place belongs to no one who harms the weak. Leave now." The scavengers laughed, thinking the dragon was bluffing. "Or what?" one of them shouted. Valerian's eyes glowed slightly, not with fire, but with authority. "Or I will stop you, without striking a blow." The scavengers hesitated, unsure what he meant. Then one of them lunged toward a small container near Aaron, thinking to scare the boy. Valerian moved quickly, not striking but blocking the attack with the tip of his tail. The container slid harmlessly away. Aaron's eyes widened. "You didn't hurt them." Valerian rumbled. "Strength is not only in fire. It is in control. In knowing when to act and when to stop. In using fear wisely, not cruelty." The scavengers backed away slowly, realizing that the dragon's presence alone was enough to stop them. They had expected an attack, but instead Valerian's calm and steady power held them like a wall. Without harming anyone, he had shown them that he was not to be trifled with. Aaron stepped forward. You are amazing," he said quietly. Valerian shook his head slightly. "No. You are amazing. You stayed when others would run. You trust when others would fear. That is strength." The scavengers, now realizing they could not win, turned and fled across the empty port. Their shouts faded into the distance, leaving only the wind and the quiet rustle of broken metal. Valerian exhaled slowly, his body relaxing. "You see," he said to Aaron, "you do not need fire to protect. You only need courage, wisdom, and the will to act without hate." Aaron nodded, feeling the lesson deep inside him. "I understand. Sometimes fighting is not the answer." The dragon looked at the boy, and for the first time in a long time he felt proud, not for defeating enemies but for teaching someone else the meaning of strength. "Yes," Valerian said. "Strength without fire can save more than strength with fire ever could." Aaron smiled, thinking about the small things he had done to survive. Gathering food, finding safe places to sleep, helping small creatures who crossed his path. "I think I have done that too," he said. Valerian's tail swished, the movement slow and thoughtful. "Then you are learning well. And maybe, together we can show others that there is another way. A better way." The fire crackled between them as the wind blew stronger, carrying dust and sparks. Valerian and Aaron stood together, looking over the ruined spaceport. The galaxy was harsh, but they knew now that kindness, courage, and cleverness could protect them even when weapons could not. Aaron's eyes sparkled. Do you think we could help people here? Not fight, but help?" Valerian considered the boy's question. "Yes, we could. But it will take patience. It will take trust. And it will take courage, more than most realize." The boy nodded. "I can do that. If you help me." Valerian rumbled softly, a sound like approval. "Then we begin." The ruins no longer seemed empty. Small sparks of hope glimmered in the dust and darkness. The boy and the dragon, teacher and student, warrior and survivor, had discovered something greater than any weapon, the power to change the world without violence. As the sun began to rise, casting faint light over broken ships and torn metal, Valerian and Aaron prepared for what was next. Not a battle of claws or fire, but a challenge of courage, wisdom, and kindness. They would face it together. And for the first time in many years, Valerian Ashscale felt that his past deeds, the wars and destruction, did not define him completely. There was still a path forward, a way to make things better. All it took was courage, care, and the quiet strength to act without anger or fire. The galaxy waited, harsh and uncertain, but the dragon and the boy would meet it with something new. A strength that came from heart, not claws. And together they would show that even in a cruel world, goodness could protect and inspire. The sun rose slowly over the abandoned spaceport, casting pale light on broken metal and scattered debris. The fire from the night before had burned low, but Valerian Ashscale and Aaron Holt still sat together, watching the horizon. The galaxy was wide, harsh, and unpredictable, yet in that moment they felt a small sense of peace. Aaron stretched and rubbed his eyes. "So, what do we do now?" he asked, glancing at the dragon. Valerian looked down at him, his eyes soft with thought. "Now we build." Not walls. Not weapons. But hope. A place where people, no matter how small or weak, can be safe. Where they can eat, rest, and survive without fear. Aaron's eyes brightened. You really think we can do that? The dragon nodded slowly. I do. But it will take time. Patience. And courage. Courage like yours, boy. Aaron smiled, feeling proud. Then let's start. They moved across the spaceport, collecting scraps of metal, pieces of wood, and whatever else could be useful. Valerian's strength allowed him to lift heavy beams and broken ship parts easily, while Aaron worked carefully, arranging pieces to make shelters and safe spaces. Slowly the ruins began to change. A broken hangar became a small shelter. Cracked walls formed walls to block the wind. A pile of discarded metal became a table for shared food. Other survivors began to notice. At first they watched from a distance, unsure of the dragon and the small human. Rumors had spread about the old warrior, and many were afraid. But they also saw something unusual. Valerian did not threaten anyone. He did not roar or breathe fire. He simply worked alongside the boy, building, helping, and sharing. Aaron called out to them. Come. We have food. We have shelter. You don't need to be scared. Slowly, one by one, people stepped forward. A thin woman with a baby, a man carrying a small crate of supplies, a few other children, lost and alone. They approached cautiously. Valerian lowered his massive head, letting them see he meant no harm. His presence was strong, but it was calm, protective. The first human stepped inside the shelter. You let us in? He asked, voice trembling. Valerian nodded. Yes. All who come peacefully are welcome. No one will be harmed here. The survivors smiled, relief spreading across their faces. They began to share what little they had brought, and soon, laughter mixed with the wind and the crackle of small fires. The spaceport, once empty and lonely, was filling with life. Aaron turned to Valerian. Look, they're happy. You did this. Valerian shook his head. No, you did this. You taught me that strength is not in fire but in caring. In kindness. In protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The boy smiled shyly. We did it together. Days passed. The shelter grew. More people arrived, drawn by the rumor of the dragon who did not harm, and the boy who had asked for leftovers. Valerian and Aaron taught them how to work together, how to share food, how to protect one another. The old warrior's past seemed to fade in the warmth of the present. The boy's courage, patience, and honesty became the heart of the small community. One afternoon, a small ship landed near the spaceport. A group of travelers had heard of the dragon and the boy, and they came to see if the stories were true. They expected fear, perhaps attack, but what they found was different. Valerian greeted them calmly, and Aaron offered food and shelter. The travelers were amazed. The feared dragon, known for destruction, now smiled softly, helping humans and aliens alike. You have changed, one of the travelers said. Not by fighting, but by caring. By showing strength without fire. Valerian looked at Aaron, proud and humbled. It is not just me, he said. It is the boy. He asked a question, a simple question. And that question changed everything. Aaron blushed slightly. It was just asking for food. Valerian rumbled, a sound of amusement and warmth. Yes. But it taught me more than any battle ever could. That even the smallest act of honesty or courage can change the galaxy. The community grew slowly. Gardens were planted in broken containers. Water was collected from rain in small wells. The people shared stories and songs. Valerian no longer wandered alone. Aaron no longer slept in fear. Together they had made a new path forward. One evening, as the sun set in shades of orange and gold, Aaron and Valerian stood on a small hill overlooking the spaceport. The shelter glowed faintly with lights, laughter drifting up into the sky. We did it, Aaron whispered. Valerian rumbled softly. Yes. And this is only the beginning. There are more worlds, more people who need help. But here, we have made a start. And that matters. The boy looked up at the dragon, admiration and trust shining in his eyes. Will you stay with me? Valerian lowered his massive head, eyes softening. Yes, Aaron. I will stay. Not as a weapon, not as a warrior of war, but as someone who protects. Someone who cares. Someone who can help make the world better. The stars began to shine as night fell, gentle and calm. Fires glowed in the shelter, voices whispered, and the spaceport, once a place of fear and ruin, now thrummed with life. Valerian and Aaron stood together, watching over it all, knowing that even in the vast, cruel galaxy, kindness and courage could create hope. And in that hope they both found something they had been searching for. For Valerian it was redemption, not from the past but for the future. For Aaron it was a home, not just of walls and fire but of trust, love and courage. The galaxy was still wide and uncertain. Wars had happened and danger would always exist. But here, on this small, forgotten world, the dragon and the boy had shown that even the smallest acts, sharing food, showing mercy and trusting one another, could change everything. Valerian spread his wings slightly, feeling the wind, feeling the life around him. Aaron stood beside him, small but brave, smiling up at the sky. Together they had made a new path forward, a path of strength without fire, hope without fear and courage without cruelty. And as the stars shone above, their story, born from a single question, would grow into something the galaxy would never forget.